Well, hello there, everyone. Welcome. This is the second of a series of four presentations from the relationship model of addiction. And I want to thank Sovereign Health again to making this possible for us to meet and learn about this model, the relationship model of addiction. So I want to start off by just repeating some of what you talked about, what you said about me during the introduction, that this model that I created, the relationship model of addiction, is kind of an eclectic formulation that comes from my training, from the theoretical models that I learned, 30 years of experience working with clinical population, and also my own experience of addiction and recovery related to porn and compulsive gambling. So I have all of that put into this model, and I also, since I said it was the second of a series of four, I just kind of want to review with you a little bit the relationship model of addiction overview, because I don't know how many of you were there for the first presentation, and I don't know how many of you know anything about this. So the relationship model of addiction. What I wanted to do in creating this was kind of pick up where the disease model leaves off, where it left off, and rather than focusing on the biological aspects of addiction, which was the prevailing paradigm for 60 years and still is, I wanted to create an understanding of addiction that really focuses on much more on the emotional, psychological, relationship aspects and the experiential aspects. So I did that, and so let's just go through the relationship model of addiction high points. So the definition of an addiction is not it's not a disease, and it's not biologically based. I see addiction as a relationship, as opposed to a pathological dependency. It's a relationship with the means of relief, whether it's substances or sex or porn or gambling or food or people is in codependency. It's a relationship with the means of relief of pain from unmet, unconscious emotional needs. So it's really focusing on emotional pain and a means to relieve that pain. And it's a relationship more than a dependency. Okay? Then the cause of addiction is the relationships that fail to provide adequate emotional nourishment. The family of origin relationships that leaves children in a state of pain because their needs were not met. So that's the cause of addiction. It's the pain from unmet emotional needs, usually stemming from family of origin, early relationships as well as current ones. And so the implication here is that the pain, emotional pain, is the underlying driving force of addiction, because the more pain there's going to be the greater the need to relieve that pain. So that's the presence and the amount of pain from unmet emotional needs is the underlying driving force. And it's also a predisposing condition. It's the primary predisposing condition. So the more trauma, the more unmet needs, the more pain that someone has accumulated or absorbed in their lives, the more likely, the more predisposed they are going to be to find a means of relief to relieve that pain and get involved in a relationship. And, just going back to the definition of addiction for a minute, about it being a relationship, think of it as just as is like any other relationship. It's like a secret love affair. So you have this relationship. So the more pain you're in, the more predisposed you are to finding some kind of means of relief or secret lover to kind of get involved with emotionally to make you feel better, to relieve that pain. Also, another part of the relationship model of addiction is what I explain or elaborate on the psychodynamics of addiction, which is the interplay, which is about the interplay between dependence and denial, and just understanding the relationship between dependence and denial, with denial being a mechanism or the way the way of preserving and protecting this relationship, the addiction. Denial distorts perception so that it supports the continuing relationship without any dissonance, without any upset, without any concern, without any worry, because it keeps the reality of the relationship and the consequences of the relationship unconscious, so you can't see it. Now, the other part of the relationship model of addiction that we're going to start talking about today are the 3 stages of recovery. And those 3 stages of recovery are breaking up, which we're going to get into today, and which after you break up, you can move into the 2nd stage of recovery, stage 2, developing the relationship with self. And so it's all about breaking up with one relationship and getting acquainted and beginning to foster the relationship with yourself, which has been lacking for as long as the person, the addict, has been in their addiction. And then as you move through stage 2 and develop a relationship with yourself, then you're going to be in a position to enter into stage 3, creating emotionally nourishing relationships. And this stage 3 is basically intensive relationship training. So you can learn how develop the skills necessary for creating emotionally nourishing relationships. So the premise is that if the cause is pain from unmet emotional needs, the recovery and the healing and the treatment is going to involve developing emotionally nourishing relationships, which is going to cut down the amount of pain that is backed up from from unmet emotional needs. And there's not going to be the same need for relief, and therefore the whole motivational structure and relationship to the means of relief is going to be changing. So it doesn't necessarily go away, but the motivation is going to be different. When you're getting your needs met and you're no longer in pain and you're able to grow and you're kind of on track with yourself and your life, addiction is going to be getting off your radar, and it's going to change. The whole relationship is going to change. So that's kind of the summary, the overview of the relationship model of addiction. So now, moving into the specifics of stage 1. This is what we're going to talk about today. Breaking up. So the first step in recovery, really before you even start on a path of recovery and start the first stage of breaking up, there needs to be a period of sustained stabilization, or sobriety or abstinence. And after you achieve that sustained period of stabilization, then maybe that could be, 1 month, 3 months, maybe 6 months, but at some point you're going to be starting off in recovery and moving towards breaking up. You're going to have to break up this relationship. And I put destination points. So there's going to be 7 pieces, places, stopping points that comprise this first stage of breaking up. So I want to take you through that. So I know that I'm speaking to a predominantly clinical, professional, practicing audience, and so I'm wanting to give you this information so you could incorporate it and apply it in your work, and beginning with education. You could start with the educational part of recovery. So what is breaking up? So you're going to go through, there are 7 destination points. So the first one is about recognition of this relationship and understanding what this relationship is about, how you got into it, and what it's doing to you. You really have to understand, so you kind of, This is going to kind of press on denial and test denial and kind of, through interacting with the therapist or reading, you're going to begin, the addict in recovery is going to begin to see the relationship for what it is, as a really unhealthy relationship. And I'll tell you all the ways that it's unhealthy. But the point is that the person in recovery needs to recognize and begin admitting to the reality and the truth of what this relationship is and what it's about. So some of these things include that the relationship is connected to pain. So you have this relationship with the means of relief. A, it is a very strong relationship, and B, it is with the means of relief. And the reason why you're in a relationship with the means of relief is that you're in pain, whether you're aware of it, regardless of how aware of it you are. You're in a fair amount of pain when you started this relationship, and you wouldn't be in this relationship if you weren't in that much pain. Just understanding some of these things, kind of processing this information, then also just using the relationship as a means of relief to feel better. So you're really not involved, not looking for contact, or you're looking for love, or you're looking for companionship. Really, the relationship has a specific function and purpose, and that is to make you feel better and kind of relieve the pain that you're in. It's kind of an objectifying purpose for the relationship. It's not from person to person. It's you're looking for anything that's going to make you feel better, and you get involved with that means of relief just like you would a real person, like secret lover, like I said before. Also, that this pain that drives the relationship is unconscious, mostly, and in the process of talking about this and educating, you're going to become more conscious of it. So it's unconsciously driven by emotional pain from unmet emotional needs. And that's the underlying driving force. Again, just to understand your motivation and how this relationship came to be. Also, in terms of it being an unhealthy, bad relationship, you're not deriving any real nourishment from this relationship. Just because it makes you feel better doesn't mean that you're actually getting nourished, getting healthier, getting stronger, feeling better. It's a temporary, artificial, illusory effect. And just it's nothing healthy about it. You're not getting really anything that's sustaining or growthful or feeding you in any kind of healthy way. Also, these are just general bullet points to kind of go over and make sure, when you're talking with your clients, to really make sure you get an understanding that it registers to them what you're talking about. You're also out of control. This is a relationship in which you were kind of out of control. You were in over your head. It was overpowering or consuming. You couldn't really think about anything else. You couldn't stop it, even if when you know that you're getting into trouble and you're not functioning well and there's other problems happening from it, and you might even think, well, maybe you should get out of it. The fact of the matter is that you really can't get out of it because you're out of control. You're in over your head. You're more involved than you realize, and you can't break up, even if you wanted to, no matter what it was doing to you or how hard you tried. Again, just understanding these things. Another aspect that makes this relationship a bad relationship is that look at your behavior. It's caused you and continues to cause you to behave in a way that's uncharacteristic. You behave in ways and relate to people and function in life in a way that is influenced and determined and affected by this relationship with the means of relief. So you're really behaving as an addict, and behaving as an addict involved in this relationship is not behaving like who you really are if you were not in this relationship. So you're not being yourself. Just lost in a secret love affair. And also, when you're talking about why this relationship is bad, look at what it's doing to you in your life. Look at how it's affecting the way you relate and the people who you want to be around and your relationships. And what happens is when you're in your addiction and in this bad relationship, your relationships are kind of going to divide up into those who support your addiction, and you could be addicted around them, and kind of distancing yourself and disconnecting from those who threaten your addiction, who challenge you on it, who don't support it, or pose a threat to it. So moving on, with things that why this relationship is really unhealthy. So another aspect is to understand that the relationship had become the primary relationship. It's your number one relationship. So that is all your life and other relationships. Your life revolves around this relationship, and all other relationships you have are rendered secondary. So you're not going to be able to engage in your regular current relationships the way you ordinarily would when you're involved in your addiction, because it becomes preferential or avoided. You prefer those in which you can maintain your addiction in and avoid those who threaten it on any level. So, and also when you are involved in this relationship, it's very obsessive, it's very consuming, and your whole, like I said before, your life revolves around this relationship, and all you're really thinking about is your next rendezvous. I mean, you just can't really function or focus on anything. Just when are you going to get this rendezvous? When are you going to get that relief? When are you going to get to feel better? And that's really what you're thinking is what your thinking is focused on. And lastly, there are other ones. I'm sure there are other ones that we can come up with, but these are the ones that I selected to discuss more with the client in an educational kind of way, and that is, there's a lot of secrecy and deception and lying and hiding, and you conduct this relationship in secrecy and you cover it up by a cloak of deception. So it's kind of a 1 and 1 equals 2, that if the only way you can have this relationship is in secret, that there's something that you're kind of on a collision course with, or something that is not fitting into your life in a natural way. You have to cover it up and keep it apart from everyone else. So this is recognition. So just beginning with understanding this relationship as a bad relationship. Now, the next destination point is progression. And this kind of extends and follows from the first one. Because not only are you recognizing that all the ways that it's a bad relationship and unhealthy for you and bringing you down, you want to actually get a picture and see the progression of what has happened to you from the time that you started this relationship and all the way through it. So you want to really see the ways in which, for as long as you were in this relationship, everything was just getting worse and worse. So you were obsessive. As I said before, you recognize that obsessive consuming part of your experience, and it just gets more. You become more obsessive, and you get more out of control, not less. You know that you weren't functioning that well as long as you were in your addiction, but there's a steady diminishment of functioning and mounting problems in all areas of life as long as you're in this addiction. So when you're working with your clients and educating them about this, you want to get from them examples of what you're talking about. You want to get examples so they could see how much their function was diminished and all the other problems that were created and mounting in all areas of life. And also you lose your objectivity and your judgment gets impaired, so your decision making is disrupted, and you're just not able to make healthy decisions and take care of yourself, and you're acting without thinking. Your judgment's impaired, and you're putting yourself at risk constantly and staying engaged and involved in a relationship in which you're just self-destructing and acting impulsively without any thought, without any regard for consequences. Another part of this destination point that you want to talk about with your clients is so they could see that as long as they were involved and they were getting more and more involved, they were covering up more and operating more in secrecy within themselves. And what that does, what they were doing was they were getting really better at making it appear that they're okay while they conducted this secret life. So you learn that the appearance, the facade that you put out to the world is one in which you're calm and everything's okay, when inside you are really out of control and hiding, and you're just conducting this whole secret life so no one can see it. And so you develop a way, you learn how to appear one way on the outside when there's a storm of emotions and other involvements in this relationship going on inside, so that no one knows. Okay? So these are different ways in which it's getting worse. All the problems and all the badness or unhealthy aspects of it just get worse as long as you're in the relationship. Okay, so that's the second destination point. Now moving into the third destination point. Again, you're talking to your clients about this stuff. This is presenting at this level right now. This is an educational part of recovery and treatment, beginning with this, just understanding what the hell's going on here with this addiction and this relationship. Now, this third part I have found to be very, very important, and every person that I worked with, this is relevant to and needed to a lot of time to kind of process through. And I'm talking about working through the stigma of powerlessness. So the first step of the 12-step, and early in recovery, and I think it's a basic part of the process to admit, step one of the 12 steps is to admit that you are powerless over your means of relief and that your life had become unmanageable. So a lot of people go through this. This is step one. A lot of people go through the steps, work on it with their sponsor, and admit that they're powerless. However, there's often an emotional component to admitting that you're powerless that doesn't get the attention and the exploration that it deserves, that it needs, in order to actually admit that you're powerless and your life had become unmanageable and be okay with it and feel okay about yourself. Because the admitting of the powerlessness is usually the last thing that you're going to want to do, because your identity and your self-worth and your sense of being okay is based on the illusion that you have control and that you are powerful and you're able to handle this. And that is a sign of strength and esteem and status. But if you admit that you're powerless, it's the way so many of us are wired, is that it translates to that we're weak, inadequate, defective, not good enough, that there's something wrong with us if somehow we can't control this. So this is a process of humility, of being honest with yourself, being realistic, and looking inside as to what does it bring up for you? How is it for you? How comfortable are you? Can you accept yourself? Are you okay getting to the place of humility and recognizing that you are really out of control and you were really, truly powerless in this relationship? And that is a human thing. That is a vulnerability that we all share, because it all comes from pain. The more pain that we're in, the more we're going to need to relieve it and go to whatever, take drastic measures or whatever lengths we need to go to get that relief. And we're driven. And it's a lot of it, the power of the underlying driving force of this pain to relieve it is unconscious. And it's just this stopping point is really about feeling how is it to admit that you're powerless and out of control. So usually there's a lot of demoralization and shame, like I said. And then you also want to explore and kind of connect the dots. So the person, the recovering person who's you're working with and educating about addiction, that they can see that a lot of their self-worth and well-being was based on an illusion. That they're choosing to do this, that this is something that they could choose to do and then choose to stop, that they control and that they can control through their will. And so the whole, this is a hard thing to work through, but it is possible and necessary. But just to look at, to see where your self-esteem comes from and what it's based on. And when you see that, you can see that it's really fragile because it's based on an illusion, and that you're moving towards accepting that you're going to still be okay, that you're worthwhile and great, even if you have limitations around your ability to control all of these relationships and your addiction. So it's about gaining humility to see and admit that you're out of control, but to accept it and feel okay that that is the truth. And, in this process, there's usually a lot of just painful realizations because you see how you were wired and that, how fragile your identity was. And when you can start growing an identity and seeing yourself as you really are, you could then begin to accept yourself as you are much more, and accept that you're going to need to admit that you're out of control in order to move past it and get a handle on your life and get your life going in the direction you want it to be going. So it leads to greater self-acceptance, humility, and compassion. And also, not only do you get to see that your self-esteem was based on an illusion, but when that happens, you also get more objective and you're able to see things more as they are. All the other, the reality of what you were, avoiding or hiding or denying, and a whole lot more reality comes through when you do this process of working through the stigma of powerlessness. And ultimately, you're going to be able to make healthier decisions based on what is real and true, as opposed to based on an illusion of how you want to think of yourself. Okay? So this is a very, very key step. Every person that I've ever worked through has to confront an immediate sense of demoralization and shame when coming to admit that they're powerless and out of control. Okay, moving forward to the fourth destination point, and this is, I call discovery. And what this is about is talking about, having exploring this conversation, really talking about and finding out from the client, when did this relationship begin? So discovery is about connecting the dots to, you're in this relationship, but when did it begin? And what was going on with you when it began? And when you go through this process, you connect these dots. So when you start thinking about when the relationship began, you can go, it could be a moment when that first extraordinary rush or high that you experienced that was extraordinary and irresistible. It's really helpful to go back to become conscious of when you made this relationship, when this relationship started, was when, for many addicts, from when you experienced the excitement and the relief and the euphoria of the mind and mood altering effect from the means of relief. From that moment, you get hooked. So just to kind of connect those dots to the client. And for a lot of people, it's not necessarily a moment. For a lot of people it is, but for a lot of people it's not. For a lot of people it was kind of like it was a period of time when the relationship was taking hold, where it may have been 2, 3, 4, 5 experiences with the means of relief, over a period of days or months. But again, when you connect with when this relationship began, then you look at what was going on emotionally for you and in your relationships at that time, whether it was a moment or whether it was a period of time. And invariably, everyone that I've ever worked with who are addicts, when they go back to when the relationship began and the point of discovery, there was a lot of chaos, a lot of trauma, a lot of rupturing relationships, a lot of fear, a lot of lack of safety, a lack of confusion, a lack of contact, a lack of connection, just rampant, radical, unmet emotional needs, and you were alone and overwhelmed with a lot of pain, and you have to figure out how you're going to cope and function in life. And so this is about making a connection between the relief, or the feeling that the means provides, and the pain that it's relieving. And that pain is real, and to source it from where it comes from. You know, sourcing it back to these family of origin relationships, that all that you had to deal with in growing up with these significant others you were depending on who were not able to provide what you needed emotionally. And yeah, okay, so it's just really about, I have the same thing, I could just say the same thing again, that your, as you go through this destination point, the addict's going to understand how they were predisposed, because that pain would only lead them to seeking relief, make them desperate for relief, and it was building for a long time, and it's no accident that they got hooked up with this means of relief. And so they could start appreciating their emotional life and connecting with the pain that they're in, and hopefully begin having some compassion for themselves, acceptance, forgiveness, empathy, kindness for themselves, to see that it's not a matter of being weak as much as it was being in pain and being desperate for relief. Okay, so moving along to the next destination point of stage 1, breaking up. So we're going to talk about emotional withdrawal. Emotional withdrawal. So this again is about educating, to understand. See, a lot of what you're doing with the client through these stages and destination points is making your clients more conscious of what they were unconscious about before and what was going on with them, to kind of shine light on their experience, on their unconscious experience. And emotional withdrawal is one of the areas that most addicts are unconscious about, don't know about. You know, in our training, we learn a lot about physical withdrawal, and I don't know how much mention there is and exploration there is and description there is of emotional withdrawal, but I think it's key. I think it's real, and I think it's more front and center than the physical withdrawal aspects. It's, you know, I understand with certain substances you can develop a physical withdrawal or a physical dependence and tolerance, but I think that like what you're getting from me right now, from the relationship model of addiction perspective, is that it's an emotionally based relationship. So the withdrawal that I'm talking about, there are 2 different kinds of emotional withdrawal that you want the client, your client, to become more cognizant of. And that is, the first kind is what happens, you know, the trajectory between, as you rendezvous with your means of relief and you start getting excited and you start feeling better and you escape the pain that you're in, it's only temporary. You're going to come back to reality. It's, you know, whether it takes the amount of time that it takes for the chemical to metabolize, or whether it's sex, or after these experiences, or the rush of gambling, after this rush and this excitement and this high, it's over. And when it's over, you're back down to reality. And what the withdrawal part about it is that you're actually feeling worse than you did before, in contrast to how great and high you felt during your rendezvous. It's just reality becomes a less than experience in contrast to that. And so if you thought you were having a difficult time, you were depressed or somber or discontent or frustrated or whatever you were dealing with before you rendezvoused, you're actually feeling worse afterwards. And again, you want your clients to become conscious and experience this and go, oh yeah, that's true. After every time you have a rendezvous, or every time you are engaging, using your means of relief, you're actually going to feel worse afterwards. The difference between the high and the crash always tends to be a net negative. You're actually going to, as high as you were, where you end up after you settle back down to reality is going to be worse than you were before. You have less energy and you're more alienated and desperate and feeling worse. And then, of course, what happens when you're feeling worse? You're more desperate and you're looking for that means of relief even more. So it becomes a vicious cycle. It feeds itself. The addiction feeds itself because it gets you high, knocks you down. You crash down, and then when you crash, you're feeling worse. And when the more pain you're in, the more desperately you're going to be looking for that means of relief. It strengthens every time you use, every time you rendezvous. It strengthens that addiction because of withdrawal. This emotional withdrawal that I'm talking about. The other kind of emotional withdrawal to discuss, explore, become more conscious about, and connect the dots is when you're moving closer to breaking up. With every addict that I've ever known, including my own experience in recovery, after the breakup, as you're getting close to breaking up and after the breakup, there's going to be a crash. There's going to be a void. You're going to have to adjust. And then what I call a transitional emptiness. And this is part of the process, but it feels hard. It feels scary. It feels alone. If you get, you're uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen. You're still kind of missing, and you're in that state of pain and discomfort, and you don't have that relief, that crutch, that rendezvous. You're not going back there. So there's a period of time when you're crashed and in this transitional emptiness that is just a period of time. It's just part of the process, but you need to become conscious of it and conscious of all the feelings that you're having in that transitional emptiness. There's a void there. So, a loss of this relationship. There could be a sadness and fear of what are you going to do without it? How much you dependent on that relationship for relief? What are you going to do now? And that there's an identity crisis because you never really thought about yourself and your life and your priorities and your purpose, and you were just totally consumed and absorbed in this relationship with the means of relief, and now if you're breaking up from that, who are you? So there's a lot of questions that just are going to come out, and the point of going through this destination point is becoming conscious of them, becoming conscious of your experience, so that you can then make choices about how you're going to proceed and interpret what it means and why you're having those feelings and where are you going next. It's that it kind of just sets you up to move out of that pain once you become conscious of this emotional withdrawal. So those are the two kinds of emotional withdrawal to discuss and shed light on. Moving forward, breaking up is the process of dismantling your denial, because as I said, indicated earlier, this relationship, this dependency, this involvement is predicated on denial and how well denial works. The better it works, the stronger the dependency. The stronger the dependency or this relationship is, the stronger, more effective denial has to be. So what you're learning is you as the clinician understand the interplay. If you understand and embrace the relationship model of addiction, you're going to be understanding already before you meet your clients. You're going to be understanding that there's a hand-in-hand relationship, that they work hand-in-hand, and denial is the soldier of the dependency, and its function and job is to preserve it and protect the dependency by distorting your perceptions. And it works unconsciously, so your perceptions are distorted without you even knowing that they're distorted. So you can't tell that they're distorted. This is the power of denial. So in this part of the process of dismantling denial, your clients are going to get an appreciation and be awed by the power of how this works, how denial works, and how it functions. How it, it's there. It's an incredible thing. It's brilliant, the denial, because it distorts your perception, so you don't see that you're in trouble and have a bad problem, and you don't know that your perceptions are being altered. So you have no idea. So another piece of this education in terms of dismantling denial is you want your clients to understand that wherever there's dependency, there is denial. Wherever there's denial, there's dependency. It's protecting the dependency. So you really want your clients to understand the connection between denial and their relationship, and also see all the different manifestations of denial, how elaborate and multitudinous its manifestations are. There's so many ways in which the perceptual distortion occurs. It could occur, it works internally, like if you have a moment of concern that maybe this relationship isn't healthy, or you're questioning some of the things that happen, like you got a DUI, or you had a big fight, or you had a big work problem. Okay, these are the external aspects of it. But if you have external problems arising from the addiction, how denial works is that you rationalize them away and attribute them to other things. And then if you have internal dissonance or concerns and worry about maybe you're out of control, or maybe this relationship isn't healthy because this and this happened, denial works so that you rationalize and you don't quite make those connections. It disrupts the natural connectedness between the event and the cause of the event. So you just don't know what's going on. It's incredible. And then you want to be talking again, so you want the client to really identify ways in which their denial works, and all the examples, or as many as you can, to identify the ways they were deluding themselves, deceiving others, deceiving themselves, and just getting a better appreciation. Awesome. It's an awesome appreciation of this denial, how it works. And once it's exposed and it's brought into light and it's no longer unconscious, it's not going to work as effectively once you see your denial operating. So that's what you're wanting to do, help your clients to see the denial operating and understand that it's working, it's a direct extension and in service, works in the service of preserving the dependency. Okay, so moving forward, now we're entering, this is the seventh destination point. And this is after all of this other work, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 has been trespassed or traversed or covered. You got through it. You're at this point now. Now you're going to need to physically, whether it's sharing to other people or writing a goodbye letter, like make it official, make it explicit, make it formal, announce it to the world and to yourself that you need to break up and you are breaking up. And in this letter is a way of empowering your ability to say goodbye, and just helps you make it real. It helps the experience of you really saying goodbye to this relationship that you were so involved with, but you're saying goodbye. And in the letter, you want to cover a few bases. So the way this would work with a client is that you would be talking about and educating about the necessity of having to go through a breakup and say goodbye to this relationship. And one way to do it is to write a letter, a goodbye letter. The writing of the letter is, very powerful, and then the sharing of the letter with other people or the therapist is makes it more powerful and more real and hit home. So you could actually let go and move on. So in this letter, you want to be able to say things like, I've made a decision to break up. I've made a decision. This relationship is for all the reasons. You made a decision. And what is this decision based on? All the reasons why you need to break up. And to be talking about and connecting with, becoming conscious of, this is going to be a deal. This is going to be a big deal. You moving on in your life without this crutch, without this escape, without this way of dealing with your pain, what are you going to do? And just identify that you're going to really miss this relationship. It was a very important relationship. This is a way of celebrating this relationship with the means of relief, because it was the greatest thing that you found to make you feel better. So what you missed the most was the ease of relief, the convenience of it, the involvement of it, the reliability of it. It always was there. It always worked. And to be left to your own devices, boy, how are you going to? So in the process of writing this about what you're missing the most, you're also at the same time moving to, now what? How are you going? What are you going to move on about? You're basically saying, when you miss this relationship, that you could actually live without it. The more you become conscious of missing the relationship and what you'll be missing, the more you move, the closer you're moving towards, now what are you going to do, and how are you going to cope without that means of relief? And more along the same lines, to elaborate, what you were getting and will never get from this relationship. That's another part of it. That it's temporary, it's illusory, and it's objective. It's just not even a real. It's not even a real. There's no kind of real connection with another person. You're never going to get love. You're never going to get emotional needs met. You're never going to get nourished. You're going to never provided that. So that is why you're going to be saying goodbye. And also to include in this letter your plan going forward on your own. How are you going to do this? What are you going to do without this relationship? So again, when you're forced to think, go inside to think about these things, and then to articulate them in a letter format, to write them down, and then to share them, it really moves you to greater liberation and freedom and letting go, moving forward. Along with the goodbye letter, there's a declaration letter that you could write, which kind of serves the same purpose. You're saying goodbye, and then you're declaring, okay, how are you going to be? How are you going to proceed? You're going to be okay without this relationship. How are you going to go forward on your own? What are you looking for in your life? What's most important to you? What are your priorities? What kinds of relationships are you now looking for? And what you were longing for all your life that your addiction, the means of relief, could not provide, would never provide, and never was. In this declaration letter, you're also making a decision to now finally go after what you ultimately want, which basically, for many people, is about intimacy, love, emotionally nourishing relationships. And then also kind of planting a seed here. This is my own idea here of the declaration letter, that you realize it's going to be a little bit difficult moving from your life experience and coming out of this addiction and where you were all of your life to now how are you going to create, emotionally nourishing relationships. So there's more work that you have to do, and so the necessity of doing that work and gaining the experience and skills that you're going to need to create more love and emotionally nourishing relationships. So this is a key part of it. This is where, after this letter, this piece of the process, you're ready to let go. A shift had occurred. You're consciously letting go of this relationship and moving on, kind of into the unknown. So those are the stages of the destination points of stage 1 breaking up. Now this could take, I would say this could take anywhere from 3 to 9 months or a year of really diving into these destination points, and really it's about experiencing consciously all of these things that we were talking about: withdrawal, discovery, recognition, and seeing denial. And when you're able to break up, when you're at this point right now, what happens, you don't quite know it at the end because you're in that transitional emptiness, but you're going to move through it. That's temporary. And when you move through it, what happens is that you're going to have incredible, most people, this is what I've seen, most people have incredible amounts of energy that becomes available for them that was unused before, so they have more to work with in their life. And just a space opens up, and they're more available and more connected to other people. Because without this relationship, without the relationship with the means of relief, there's now space for to connect with other people and have healthier relationships. And so you're closing, you're opening up space to have other kinds of experiences and relationships that are going to be far healthier. Now, the most important part of what happens when you break up is that space is open, and what's exciting is what's going to eventually fill that space. After you move out of that transitional emptiness, then what often happens is that you're going to be stepping right into stage 2, which is becoming acquainted with yourself. And the relationship with the developing relationship with yourself, that is what stage 2 is about, is going to replace that relationship with the means of relief. Self will be discovered, and the relationship with self will begin in stage 2. So you're just kind of segueing into stage 2. So there we have it. So you understand that. I wanted to leave some time open for some questions and answers. And so before we do that, I just want to say to you that if you're interested and want to learn more about the relationship model of addiction and all the stages of recovery, the ebooks and hard copy books about all of what we talked about are available online at my website, relationshipvision.com. And not only will you have access to learn more about the relationship model of addiction, but there's a lot of other work that and programs, and particularly about relationships, that third stage, creating emotion nourishing relationships, which is really basically intensive relationship training that is also about becoming a more proficient relator and mastering the art of relating and intimacy. So there's a lot there at my website, relationshipvision.com, that you could learn much more about this and incorporating this into your work and just blowing you away and your clients away with the newness and the power of these stages. So, okay, so there's a couple of minutes for questions. So Natasha or someone there, I'm ready to go. So thank you, everyone. Let's hear if you have any questions. I want to try to answer them. And if I don't have time and I don't get to all of them, submit them by email, and I will respond to all of them in writing, the ones that we don't get to today.
I do have one question, and as Daniel said, we will go through questions for another 4 minutes, and once we run out of time, Ravi will be sending everyone the website as well as the email for Daniel. So the question that we have comes from Gladys, and it is, how can this relationship model be applied to adolescents in short-term treatment? I envision that this is a long journey, so how can we modify this to create short-term goals that are realistic?
I think that the relationship model of addiction and the stages of recovery apply to straight across the board, age, race, gender, every possible. It's universal. It's a human process. It's a human vulnerability. When there's pain, there's going to be a need to relieve the pain. So, however, that being said, if you're working with an adolescent population, adolescents, I would, kind of just the picture I have is that they're maybe not as developed cognitively to understand the theoretical, the intellectual aspects of this, and they may not be as open. They may be poo-poo it or cynical or just closed down or distracted. I think it's going to be a harder sell or a harder way of, it's going to be more difficult, more creative. It's going to require more patience and creativity in order to bring this down to a level of adolescence. It's not quite the same. You're just going to have to be more patient and more creative. But all of the destination points that I'm talking about could be discussed with any person, any age, any time, anywhere, regardless of what. It all fits. If they have an addiction, it's going to fit. And these are going to be really fertile, juicy areas to explore. And basically, with adolescents, do the best you can. I mean, it's the same stuff applies. It's just going to be a little bit harder getting through. And it's not to say that it's impossible. I mean, I'm sure it's going to resonate to the degree to which the adolescents are open. It's going to resonate and be enlightening, be powerful and liberating, and get that understanding to happen. I just think with adolescents, the percentage of the adolescents that you work with might be a little less than with adults, the percentage that actually gets it and, is, recovering or getting healthier or using it as a result of that information.
Thank you, Daniel. And I actually don't have any more questions, but I did get a lot of comments of how wonderful your presentation was. So we appreciate having you here. And for everyone, the CE questions and your certification for this event will be up within 24 to 48 hours. So you will be emailed the information to go to the website to complete the quiz and the evaluation on Daniel, and that way your certificate will be available for you as soon as you're done. If you do have any further inquiries, we did post Daniel's email address, which is D as in Daniel, Linder, L-I-N as in Nancy, DERMFT@gmail.com. And if you have any questions for us at Sovereign Health, our email address is CEU, that's C as in cat, EU, @sovhealth.com. So thank you so much again, Dan. We appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you again for making this happen.